humans, we are lucky in that our identity differs from everyone else. No one will ever share our identity with us. And this has had me thinking, what makes up my cultural identity? Who am I? And who do others think I am? To start, I'm Kylie Bassett, and by just meeting me, one may be able to tell that I'm a 19-year-old white American English speaking woman. And while that may be enough descriptors for some, knowing only these visible things won't even let you scratch the surface of who I really am and what my identity is. While several things have influenced me and made me who I am today, there are invisible aspects of my identity that also impact who I am. Those things include things such as my heritage, family, and religion. Both my visible and invisible aspects of my identity play an important role in what makes me unique. Thinking about all these aspects of my identity and my future career as an educator, I have to be mindful of how these parts of my identity will impact my classroom. Today, I will specifically focus on how being white and being a woman will impact me, as well as how my family and religion have shaped me, and how they will influence my career as an educator. While planning out this project, I kept thinking about the cultural iceberg we talked about several times in class. As shown in this picture, the things on the top of the iceberg represent what can be inferred by meeting someone briefly or just seeing them. These include things such as age, gender, or language. However, at the bottom of the pyramid, at the bottom of the iceberg, there are things that are invisible about our identity. These things include our beliefs, religion, family, nationality, etc. And when looking at these aspects and how they will be seen in the classroom, it is important to acknowledge power relations. In the textbook, Introducing Language and Intercultural Communication, author Jane Jackson describes power relations as one's degree of power in relation to others. In a classroom, the teacher typically has more power and authority than her students. But in my classroom, I want my students to feel that they have a voice and that their opinion matters. If I express aspects of my identity to my students, I want them to feel like this classroom is a safe space for them to express themselves too. First, I will discuss the aspects of my cultural identity that are visible and how they impact my career as an educator. As a white person, I have a lot of unearned power and influence in society. Essentially, I undeservingly have a higher position within society simply because of my skin color. In the classroom, it is important to acknowledge this power I have, but not abuse it. I must educate my students on many topics such as white privilege, systematic racism, stereotypes, microaggressions, and several others. While some of these topics are pretty profound, and I'm hoping to work with elementary age students, I will likely primarily focus on microaggressions. According to a presentation by Stanford Medicine, a microaggression is a brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults. Essentially, a microaggression is a statement or action that is offensive to someone because of its context. An analogy we discussed in class is that microaggressions are like mosquito bites. One bite is tolerable, but when your body is covered in them, it is painful and unbearable. Similarly to a microaggression, one is tolerable, but hundreds are demoralizing and painful. This is something that I feel like could easily be conveyed to elementary school students. Providing a simple analogy, students may better understand how their words can impact others. And switching back to the bigger picture of with my unearned privilege, I have to acknowledge my power and use it to make a beneficial difference within the classroom. When people are younger, it is easier to influence their minds and prevent them from feeding into a society rooted in inequity and discrimination. Another visible aspect about me is that I'm a woman. And here are some pictures of me that I think sum me up pretty well. I'm a competitive, goofy, creative, loud, bold, courageous woman. And I hate the stereotypes and expectations that society puts on us. Jane Jackson describes gender stereotyping as simplistic overgeneralizations about gender characteristics, differences, and roles of males and females. For example, our roles within a household, our roles within the workplace, and how we should look, how we should speak, and several others. The thing that makes me most upset today about being a woman is that we are seen as less or weaker than men. Women deserve to be empowered and looked at just as highly as men are in society. With this said, I feel it is important to note that lifting up women does not entail bringing men down. It is just reminding women that they are equally as important to our world. In my classroom, I want to reject any of these stereotypes that women are less worthy than others in society. Looking back at my education, I realized that most of the historical figures we talked about in my class were men. In my classroom, I would try to highlight the successes of other women in the past. Another activity I could utilize to empower women would be having students share a personal experience of a woman that has impacted their life. Doing these simple activities can help students realize that women are amazing and shouldn't be seen as lesser than men in society, and that there isn't one perfect image of a woman. Being a woman looks different for everyone, and it's just as beautiful regardless. Now, looking at the invisible aspects of my identity, it is important to talk about the influence of my family. So here's a picture from about 2006 of my family. So it's my mom, my little brother Ryan, and my dad. And then this picture was just taken in last August. And we're a very tight family, and my family is definitely my support system, and I wouldn't know how to function without them. And I grew up with both parents in my household and a little brother, like I just mentioned. And growing up with my mom and dad in my life has shown me how to love. They love each other so much, but love me and my brother even more. Seeing such love and support pouring out of them has rubbed off on me. I'm a very trusting and loving person, at times to a fault. Something else my family has been adamant about is reminding me that I'm enough. I feel like as a woman in society, we can constantly compare ourselves to other women, but my family has continually reminded me that who I am is enough and that I shouldn't hide my true self. Throughout my childhood, I've become more confident in who I am, a sassy, loud, competitive, empathetic, powerful, competitive woman. And I shouldn't tone that down for anyone. With that being said, the support of my family it is has shown me that others with that being said, the support my family has shown me is something that others aren't as fortunate to have and to receive, and is something that I constantly need to remind myself of when speaking to others, especially young students. I found myself in the past asking students somewhat invasive questions about their families. I've become more aware of this recently, but in the past myself, I've asked the students like what they did for Mother or Father's Day, or even just general questions about their families. But in today's day and age, families look so differently than they have in the past. Some families have single parents, two moms, two dads, or maybe no parents, and it is a situation that can be really sensitive to the student. It is important to keep this in mind when instructing students because not all students may have had the same familial experience that I was so fortunate to have. Regardless of what is happening at home with students, I want to make sure that my students feel loved when they're in my classroom. Another huge part of my unseen identity is my faith. I am a Catholic woman, and my faith has always been a big part of my life. It has given me a strong set of values, and it also gives something for me to fall back on when life seems crazy and ever changing. Being Catholic is something that has always been a part of my life, and this ties into the concept of religious identity formation. Jackson explains that this is the process by which individuals decide what their relationship to the religion will be. In many contexts, messages from family and religious figures begin at a very early age and are reinforced through various rituals and ceremonies. Furthermore, I was baptized in the church and received my first communion and was confirmed at the church. It is something that has always been there for me, and while my faith has been so comforting and important to me, it can be upsetting and frustrating to others. This is something critical that I remember when teaching students, especially in public schools. As important as the Catholic Church is to me, it is unfair to push my faith on other people and assume that they will want to believe what I do. I feel that I won't necessarily struggle with this, but I will definitely have to make an effort to not subconsciously throw my beliefs out there that the church also practices. It is my responsibility to teach my students that they're entitled to their own beliefs and opinions in the same way that I am. It is also my responsibility to expose them to a variety of religions rather than just teaching them about the Catholic faith. In general, the visible aspects of my cultural identity give me a lot of unearned privilege in society, and the invisible aspects of my cultural identity have played a huge role in shaping me as a person and shaping me into the person I've become. Keeping all of these influences in mind in the classroom, I need to be aware of the impact they can have. As a white teacher, I need to use my power to educate my students on the civil injustice in our country and encourage them to create change for the better. As a woman, I need to show my students how to empower other women and show them how important women can be in society and how important they are in society. As a teacher with a tight knit family, I need to remember that not all students will grow up with a similar environment at home. And I need to make sure that my students feel loved in my classroom despite what is happening at home. And lastly, as a Catholic woman, I need to make sure that I'm not pushing my views onto my students, but rather them giving options to explore other religions and practice whatever religion they want. All in all, as an educator, it is my responsibility to my students to make them feel loved and create an environment where they feel free to express themselves in the same way that I feel free to express my identity. Thank you for your time.